I would take Sanders over Demaryius Thomas. My other value in this group is Doug Baldwin. I love the value you're getting at the end of the third, but the reason why he's a value for me at the end of the third, and I don't see him as a round 2 talent anymore, is because his knee injury is kind of concerning. I moved him down a bunch in my rankings, but now you're getting. I would take him at the 3-4 turn where he's going. He's a value for me there as a wide receiver 16. Right now, I have my wide receiver 14. So he's a value to where he's going. I wouldn't reach for Doug Baldwin because he's going to be dealing with that knee injury all season long. And my last fade is Allen Robinson, guys. So he had 151 targets in back-to-back seasons. And then why that's important is he's not going to get that target volume. The reason why he finished so high, he had the volume to get to the top, 7, 8 receivers he was that season. This year he's not going to see 100. He'll be lucky to see 120 targets. That's just the way this offense works with Matt Nagy. So it's kind of ironic how this worked out. But in 2015, this is a great example. In 2015, Allen Robinson and Jeremy Maclin had their big seasons. Jeremy Maclin was playing under Andy Reid, and he finished with just under 120 targets. He finishes the wide receiver 15. Why is that important? Because he finishes the wide receiver 15 with the same points per snap and the same points per opportunity as Allen Robinson. So I think his ceiling, based on his performance, is 15. But where he's going right now, he's going as the wide receiver 17. I think you're drafting him at his ceiling, and he's a fade for me, especially because I like guys much better than him in the 4th round. And those guys, let's go talk about the 4th round guys. There's Golden Tate, Amari Cooper, Josh Gordon, Jarvis Landry, Marvin Jones Jr., Alshon Jeffrey, and Brandon Cooks are your 4th round wide receivers. It's a pretty long list. So let's go over the values first. My values is simple. It's Amari Cooper, Jarvis Landry are my 2 values, and this is simple for me. Jarvis Landry, guys, to me is probably the most underrated guy this season. The reason why is I talked about a little bit. If you guys saw it, put out a snippet about why. But, Jarvis Landry in this offense is going to have more opportunities downfield, and its proof's in the pudding. So under Todd Haley, slot receivers have received close to 17% of their targets in the deep passing game. That means 20 yards or more downfield. Jarvis Landry under Adam Gase was 7%. He's going to have a lot more opportunities go downfield in this offense. Todd Haley, the concepts he uses in this offense, he allows people to go downfield more. And why is that important? It's because, they both run the Earhart-Perkins offense. So another thing is Jarvis Landry is one of the only few players on the team that actually knows Todd Haley's offense. So their concepts are going to be the same. The route combinations might be different. But I think the combination of routes gives Jarvis Landry more opportunities downfield. But it also gives him a big advantage over Josh Gordon. It gives him a big advantage over Duke Johnson. It gives him a big advantage over, David Njoku. So this is very important to note because he does have an advantage built in because he knows the offense. That's why I think he's inside my top 15 at wide receiver this season. I love Jarvis Landry. I would take him in the 3rd over all my fades. For example, like Demaryius Thomas, Allen Robinson in the 3rd round. And my other value is Amari Cooper. So Amari Cooper is based on, it should be the opportunity, guys. He has the opportunity to be the focal point in this offense. John Gruden does have a history of, having dominant number 1 receivers. My thing is, I got burnt by Amari Cooper last season, and, I'm a little hesitant to kind of just go all in on him. But in the 4th round, he's a great value. You should take him there early in the 4th, because he has an opportunity to become a top 12 receiver in this offense. I'm just a little hesitant because he didn't do it. He should have done it last year, but we'll see. I mean, John Gruden does have a history, guys, of giving older receivers, age 33 and over, pretty big workload. So don't be surprised if Jordy Nelson has a more prominent role than everyone suspects early in the season. So my 2 fades in the 4th round, Golden Tate, Alshon Jeffrey. Golden Tate for me, it's simple, is because Kenny Golladay is actually getting more work with 2 wide receiver sets, and it's coming at the expense of Golden Tate, not Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones led the team in snaps in their 3rd preseason game, and Kenny Golladay did rotate in, and actually was getting close to where Tate was. And I think Tate makes him a fade for me. I'd rather have guys in the 5th round that are going behind him. And the other one is Alshon Jeffrey. It's simple, guys. He's injured right now. He's going to be out the first 2 games. I expect a huge regression in the touchdown efficiency in the Eagles passing game. And, that's going to affect guys like Alshon Jeffrey. So he's a fade for me in the 4th round. So going into the 5th, Chris Hogan, Juju Smith-Schuster, Robert Woods, Michael Crabtree, and Emmanuel Sanders. This is probably one of my favorite tiers to target. Chris Hogan, to me, is a value. big time, mostly because of the fact of how the offensive works. So last season, he actually in the first 8 games of the season was wide receiver 1. But more importantly than that was how he was being used. He was actually being used in the slot a lot, which has kind of been that, main focal point, the way the concepts are. But remember the Earhart-Perkins offense we talked about? Bill Belichick has mastered this. And what's important about that is they feature who they want to feature. It doesn't matter if it's a receiver, a running back, a tight end. They'll feature whoever they want in this offense. I think based on the fact that Chris Hogan has the trust of Tom Brady, after Gronk, it's Hogan. And these guys are going to be target vacuums in this offense. And I think if Hogan can stay healthy, he's going to be a wide receiver 1 this season. He's a great value in the 5th. The other guy's Michael Crabtree. No team last season has more available air yards and targets from last season than the Baltimore Ravens. A lot of the publicity is going John Brown, but when I dug deep into, practice reports and news, they always say this is Michael Crabtree's, this is his core, wide receiver core. And, I think this season, last year, his snap counts fell. The reason why his production fell, he was still a top 10 in fantasy points per snap and fantasy points per opportunity. He was up there with guys like A.J. Green, Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen. He was up there with all these guys in points per snap. So this year, he's not going to lose snaps. He's the true number 1. He was still producing at a high level. He was actually in the first 8 weeks last season, the number 1 in those categories. So just keep that in mind. He still has the talent, but he fell out of favor in Oakland. It was his snap counts that fell. He actually fell into the 50s. He was playing behind Seth Roberts the second half of the season in total snaps. So this is something to note that I caught on to. He's a great value for me in the 5th round. The other guy's Emmanuel Sanders. We just touched on it with Demaryius Thomas. I actually would take him over Demaryius Thomas. I think he's the number 1 in this offense. He's a great value for me. Right now, he's going as the wide receiver 29. I have him ranked inside my top 20 because of how I feel he might be the number 1 in this offense. In round 6, Corey Davis, Marquise Goodwin, Sammy Watkins, Randall Cobb, Devin Funchess, and Pierre Garçon. So this round for me, guys, I'm okay with Davis, Goodwin, Watkins, and Cobb. They all have you can make the arguments for all those guys. I don't mind you taking them in the 6th round, but Devin Funchess and Pierre Garçon are my only 2 fades. I definitely don't view them as, I think Funchess, there's too many wide receiver options, and I actually do like guys a little bit lower than him that I would take over him, including Cooper Kupp, Jamison Crowder, and Kelvin Benjamin. So, there's guys that I would pick over them. And the other guy's Pierre Garçon. Mostly just, I think it's actually overblown. But, him and Goodwin going this close doesn't make much sense. But I do think he is worth a pick in the top 8 rounds, but not in the 6th. I just think Garçon and the Goodwin gap is smaller than people are making it. But I still think Goodwin's number 1. So he's a great pick if you can get him in the 6th round. At 31, but Garçon for me is the number 2 in Kyle Shanahan's offense. I don't see him as a top 35. I would rather have guys like Cooper Kupp, Jamison Crowder, and Kelvin Benjamin. Okay, so in round 7, I have Will Fuller, Robbie Anderson, Cooper Kupp, Jamison Crowder, Julian Edelman. So in round 7, my value is Cooper Kupp. So my thing about Cooper Kupp is simple. Last season he was the red zone threat, right? Sammy Watkins walks away. They insert Brandon Cooks. That's only going to enhance his value in the red zone because outside of him, Robert Woods isn't a dominant red zone threat, and Sammy Watkins actually was last season. He got all his touchdowns in the red zone, and Cooks is not that guy. So I think Cooper Kupp could take the next step in this offense. He only had 5 touchdowns last year. He has plenty of room for growth in the red zone. He actually was tied with Larry Fitzgerald for red zone targets. So just keep that in mind for this season. He's a value for me in the 7th round. I like Cooper Kupp. I actually picked him as my wide receiver 3 in one league in my fantasy draft. So that's just give you some snippet there. The other guy is the only guy in the 7th round that's notable is Robbie Anderson. He's a fade. The reason why is simple. I think Quincy Enunwa could quickly become the number 1 in this offense, and he's someone that needs to start being drafted more in more drafts. But the reason why is because of Sam Darnold's tendencies. He's targeting the middle of the field. I talked about it, and this is my takeaways. In the 8th round, we have Kelvin Benjamin, Sterling Shepard, Josh Jackson, and Devontae Parker. So in this group, I have a lot of fades. So, it's only 4 receivers, but my main value is Kelvin Benjamin. Guys, listen to my Bills podcast. Brian DeBall has featured, he had a top 13 wide receiver in Brandon Marshall when he had the coordinator position, but he runs the Earhart-Perkins offense. It's going to run through Kelvin Benjamin. He's going to be a target vacuum in this offense, and, he played with Cam Newton. Josh Allen kind of gets a comp to Cam Newton. he's just going to throw up to the big man. The big man's is great as contested catches, according to Matt Harmon's perception. So I have a great value for me in the 8th round. The next one is Josh Doxson. So Josh Doxson is a fade for me. And the reason why is simple. Based on my observations, he hasn't really connected much with Alex Smith. They haven't had a lot of opportunities in the preseason in the red zone, where I think that's where he makes his hay. But I think Paul Richardson is the outside receiver I want. I think right now, to me, it's the tight ends, Jordan Reed. Then it's probably going to be Jamison Crowder. And then it's going to be Paul Richardson over Josh Doxson. So there's nothing I can see to really give him an 8th round grade. I would fade him. There's just better value in the later rounds. The next guy I got is Devontae Parker. Devontae Parker is a fade. Reason why is simple. I've seen the Dolphins practice, and I've seen them in the preseason. Kenny Stills is the guy. He's been the guy all summer. Everyone talks about how Devontae Parker has been shouted by Xavier Howard, but he's been erased by Xavier Howard. The problem is, you might be, Devontae Parker's the number 1 receiver. Xavier Howard's he's a good corner, but he's not like, Jalen Ramsey out there. Devontae Parker has become a ghost, but it's also his demeanor in the practice. I saw Kenny Stills getting extra work. I saw Danny Amendola jumping in line. Devontae Parker didn't seem to have that sense of urgency to become the number 1. I'm fading him. I'm not going to. He's like one of my main do not drafts. I have no interest in drafting Devontae Parker. So in the 9th round, we have Jordy Nelson, Kenny Stills, Nelson Aguilar, Allen Hurns, Paul Richardson, Kenny Galladay, Keelan Cole, and Cameron Meredith. In this tier, I only have 3 guys. So I'll just tell you up front, I like Nelson Aguilar in the 9th. I like Allen Hurns taking a shot. Michael Gallup's my guy, but in the 9th round, take the shot with Hurns. He's gotten the most snaps with the first team. He just hasn't produced much with them. Like I talked about Paul Richardson, taking a shot with him. I don't mind it in the 9th. Kenny Galladay, same thing. I told you he's getting some more snaps in 2 receiver sets, but there's values here. So my biggest values are Jordy Nelson, Kenny Stills, and Keelan Cole. So Jordy Nelson, right off the bat, I told you, John Gruden has a history of working with older receivers, but even his time in Tampa Bay, when he got traded over here from Oakland, he brought in Keenan McCardell and gave him like 110 targets that season. So, there's a shot that Jordy Nelson gets over 100 targets as the veteran presence in this offense.